Hey there, I wanted to just go over a list of necessities for Ron, and in this video I'm just going to go through what I've learned about how situations come up where you don't think they're going to, that disqualifies someone for Ron. And so anyway, just the more you do, the more you know, and the more tips you can come up with. I wrote this little blog post on August 5th of this year, but I'm adding to it today. Okay, first of all, I'm running into people who think that they can sign seller or buyer documents in 15 minutes and be back in, doing whatever it is that they want to do. Ron is more like an interruption than a convenience to folks. So we've kind of blown right past being able to do Ron and offer a really great convenience to our signers, and now we're just kind of a pain. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. I ran into this last week when a teacher had only scheduled 30 minutes out of her day to sign a full seller's package. And I'll get into more about what that involves. But there's a lot of information to help them get into blanks on their documents and so forth. And it's not like grabbing a pen and just starting to write. Anyhow, here's my list. My partner Jake and I came up with a list of things that we send it out in the form of an email. And we call it, Jake calls it qualifications, which I think is really a good way to put it. The signer must have a social security number for the purpose of KBA. And I say to work with me, that's because I think some people would go ahead and try it if they had like a, just an ID number if they were from out of the country, but it doesn't work very well. And it just winds up wasting the notary's time and the signer's time if you try to do it without a social security number. Okay, 4 to 5 years of credit history in the USA. That'll knock out some of the expats because they haven't been shopping in the USA or doing those sorts of things for the last few years, and they may have a brand new driver's license because they drove across the border from Mexico into McAllen and got it updated. But they're, so that they have good ID, but their credit history is just completely gone. It just has dropped off. Especially, I think this one individual I'm thinking about, he had been living in Mexico for probably 10 to 15 years, but he had a brand new driver's license. So that credit history is important. Why? Because knowledge-based authentication, or KBA, as we online notaries like to toss around, that is dependent on the credit history and the things that are in that credit history file. Okay, next, current U.S. passport or driver's license from a U.S. state. Again, that's what I require, and even though Sinex is able to look into foreign passports, the problem is, again, going back to KBA, if they don't have a USA passport or driver's license issued by a U.S. state, they likely don't have a social security number or 4 to 5 years credit history in the U.S. Frequently, it could be that someone is an elderly person and they don't have one of those a current ID, yet they do have a credit history, but somehow you're going to have to get that D or U.S. passport into the system for that credential to be analyzed. They've got to have fast, stable internet. And of course, you can tell them this until the cows come home, but folks just think their telephones will do whatever needs to be done. I had a lady get on her iPad and she used her phone as a hotspot for her iPad, and so we had the phone going and the iPad and the phone, that one little connection was just not able to keep up. And to top it off, her husband was driving while she was trying to get her documents signed. So they really need to have that time to sit at a stable location and sign documents where there's Wi-Fi or really fast cell phone reception, a good strong connection. Okay, a desktop or laptop with camera, speakers, and mic. I like to stay away from anything other than a desktop or laptop, and the reason is the people who show up with a phone or an iPad generally do not know how to flip their screens when they get into trouble and can't figure out what they're missing, because sometimes a pop-up will appear and say you missed something, and they can't see it because they're on a tiny screen and they can't flip the screen so that I can see it because they don't know how. And by the time I have gotten into the directions on how to do that, they're so frustrated they can't listen. So I am not being critical of the signer. I'm just saying let's start with a desktop or laptop to begin with, and that way you have it's very easy for me to tell them how to flip their screen or share their screen so I can see where their problem is. Okay, let's see, cell phone with a USA number. That's what I like, because even I did one last week, a guy in France who didn't have any trouble at all. He had a USA phone number, and I still don't know how that worked, but anyway, it must have gone, he must have been able to receive the message and upload from France with no problem. But we can get around that by having the Sinex system request that photograph through email. Okay, the folks need to have some ability to use Zoom, and by ability I mean some technical know-how to use Zoom and to use the platform, because those two new pieces of technology put together can be very confusing. And if they don't know how to use Zoom, then they really are going to need to get someone there to sort of help them get set up. And then the next thing we run into is the ability to take a photo of ID in a well-lit area and upload it using a link. And that takes a little bit of doing, because I don't think folks understand that, you know, that credential analysis that's going on is really looking at that document, that ID document. And so what we want them to be able to see it without that, the system to be able to look at it without any glare, and it needs to be as focused as possible. So anyway, I really go serious on these requirements, because when I do a real estate transaction, I put about an hour and a half into it before anyone even sits down to start signing. At least an hour and a half. I might get a little bit better, but it's, you know, a little bit faster than I am now. But there's just so much involved in prepping the documents that it just takes time. So I'll go into that on another video. I just don't want to belabor the point, so I'm going to go ahead and drop down and we will look a little bit further here. Okay, that graphic is something you can look at if you would like to visit my blog, which I'll put in the comments below. But this is what I also sort of go over. What made me go ahead and pull this up is that I just got a text from a signing service, and we've got someone that's in the Middle East. And, you know, my first question always is this a U.S. citizen? And I think that sort of takes them back, aback a little bit. But it's not that I don't want to serve any and everyone. It's that I've got to have, that I can't be very efficient without a Social Security number. It just is not going to work. We're probably going to have to add a credible witness in that case. But anyway, different topic. Let me stay focused here on what Ron will not work for anyone without a Social Security number. And you'd be surprised how many times, we have to kind of say that and just really drive that home that a tax ID number will not work. Ron, for me in Texas, is nearly impossible for a non-U.S. citizen unless we get a credible witness. And the credible witness then has to meet all the criteria that we just reviewed. Okay, U.S. citizens who are young and haven't established credit. The signers must have, to be safe, 4 or 5 years of credit history. And I am thinking particularly about a young lady who is in college at the university, one of the universities in Texas. And I asked her dad, because the dad and the daughter owned the property outright. So they were either buying or selling. It could have been a cash purchase. But anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is that she was a freshman in college. And the moment I heard that, I said, well, does she have credit history? Oh, yeah, she has credit history. She's on all my cards. Well, apparently that did not give her a credit history. And so, but you have to just sort of let them figure that out themselves. But you can tell them up front, young people are not going to have enough credit history, especially a college freshman. What we wound up doing with that young lady was a credible witness. I just had to improvise and pull somebody in and get that done in a different way. And since it was cash, there was no lender involved to object. Okay, anyone in the U.S. without a significant credit history, and I've already mentioned the expats, but I mention it again here because sometimes people will read one list and they won't read the other. A person who isn't able to use technology effectively. 2 days ago, I notarized for a couple on as sellers, and the minute that he started, he appeared to be a very technical person to me, but the moment that he hit the part where you've got to take a picture of your ID, it just was like, oh, this is too hard. So it can be hard. It can be. So you've got to have good lighting, no glare, so on and so forth. So, you just have to prepare them that this is it's not like back in the day when you'd send a document to somebody's email or phone and they just clicked and they were done signing, because there is a process involved. Okay, let's see. So here I've gone over again the issues with cell phones and iPads. Let's see. Individuals without a strong, fast internet connection. Okay, let's see. Oh, offshore. I've run into some offshore workers who have such horrible internet connections that I almost can't stay connected to them in a satisfactory manner. And I think how we overcame that was by having let's see, I believe we had to use call-in numbers from Zoom, and that worked because that took, some of the strain off the connection apparently, and I don't know. But anyway, we got through it. That's how I worked at that angle. Let's see, those without a current driver license or passport. And did y'all know that really Texas does call it a driver license, not a driver's license? So when you see that, and I've written it, you know that I wasn't just being lazy and leaving off the apostrophe S. If your ID isn't current, we have no way of processing the information. People without enough time should not try to do RON. And I've already gone over that sufficiently. RON can't be used in Texas to sign documents relating to a home equity loan, because those have to be signed in at the lender's office, title company, or an attorney's office, depending on how the title company decides it needs to be done, because they are insuring the transaction. Texas wills aren't yet ready to be signed by RON because of the electronic signature. That's another topic for another day. Use of credible witness. Okay, I mentioned this because in some circumstances a credible witness can be used, but this person must pass the criteria mentioned above. And many times we are asked, or I am asked, well, can the realtor do this for me? I know the title company, can they do this? Or the broker on the mortgage? How about my mom, my dad, my sister? None of those are really satisfactory, credible witnesses, because if it's your family, they care about whether you do or don't get what you want. Now, they might hope you don't get anything you want, but they care. And that's the point. When it's when it's the title company or the lender, they do stand to profit at an arm's length in a way from the transaction, so you might as well not get them involved. And then the realtor is kind of a direct beneficiary when the deal closes. So anyway, you just kind of want to stay away from those situations. And I hope this was helpful to you. You're more than welcome to copy my list if you want to put it into. I don't want you to put it on the web, but if you need to send any of this to someone you're trying to qualify for an appointment, I'm more than happy for you to use it. But if you put it on the web, then it just reduces my SEO. So I ask you not to do that. Anyhow, I hope this was helpful, and just in case you're curious, I'm going to bring up that. And that's just kind of an interesting layout on exactly what we just talked about. So I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend. If you are hearing this on a Friday, today is October 22nd, 2021. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please think about doing so. Have a great evening.